My name's Nathan, and I'm 32. No degree, no framed paper on the wall, no alumni sticker on my bumper, no stories of dorm room chaos or campus nights. Just a GED, a lot of late nights, and a bank account that made the people who used to mock me start calling me family again. For years, I told myself that was enough. That success would speak louder than whatever they used to say about me behind my back. Turns out, I was wrong. Or maybe just naive. It happened last Friday, during dinner at the house I bought for them. A place with granite counters, custom furniture, even that stupid wine fridge my mom insisted on. All of it paid in full, under my name, but never once acknowledged. We were having steaks I'd picked up on the way, cooked medium rare just how Dad likes them, paired with a bottle of something imported that Mom had circled in a magazine and conveniently forgot to order. I hadn't planned to stay long. Just enough to show my face, keep the peace, check on the repairs they'd been ignoring, and make sure the thermostat hadn't been cranked up to sauna levels again. Dinner started off fine. Tense, like always, but quiet. My sister Megan was there too. 29, 2 degrees, still unemployed, and somehow more condescending than ever. She mostly scrolled through her phone while Mom talked about how hard it is these days, and Dad complained about the price of groceries like he wasn't getting half his fridge delivered on my dime every week. Then it happened. We were halfway through dessert. That store-bought pie I brought because Mom said she didn't have time to bake. When Dad put his fork down and jabbed it in my direction. "You know," he said, voice raised just enough to draw attention, "he might pay the bills around here, but let's not forget he's still the dumb one without a degree." It took me a second to process it. The air went still. Megan snorted into her glass. Mom didn't even blink, just sipped her wine like she was watching a rerun. And me? I just stared at the slice of pie I wasn't hungry for anymore. I didn't say anything. Not at first. I let the silence hang while my mind buzzed like a wasp nest. All those years of sacrifice, working 12-hour shifts, teaching myself coding at night, crashing on couches while sending them money for theirs, it all condensed into a single, searing moment of humiliation. And the worst part? They didn't even flinch. Not one of them thought they'd done anything wrong. I stood up quietly, took my plate to the sink, rinsed it, dried my hands. Then I grabbed my keys, said, "Thanks for dinner," and walked out. It wasn't until I was in my car, engine still off, hands on the steering wheel, that it really hit me. This wasn't new. It wasn't a slip-up or a joke in bad taste. This had been going on for years. Every holiday, every visit, every text that said, "Can you help with this bill?" without a single thank you attached. Every dig about me not being educated enough. Every assumption that I'd just keep giving, keep paying, keep showing up, because what else was I good for? That night, I sat on my couch in my downtown apartment, the one they never ask about, and opened my laptop. I didn't rage. I didn't cry. I just sat there, still and quiet, like a surgeon about to make the first incision. The first plug I pulled was small. Just a little thing, the automatic grocery orders I'd set up through Instacart. Gone. The second was their Netflix account. Then the utilities I'd been covering under my name, water, electricity, even the internet Dad used to stream his sports every night. I didn't cancel them outright. Not yet, but I set the end dates and made sure the next billing cycle was theirs to handle. Then I opened the shared cloud account I'd set up for Mom, the one with all her photos backed up. I wasn't cruel. I didn't delete anything, but I removed my access, locked it down, changed the recovery info. For once, they'd have to figure out their passwords on their own. I stared at the banking app next. My stomach twisted. There it was, the auto transfer I'd been making to help pay down the second mortgage they never told me they refinanced. $1,200 every month for the last 3 years. I canceled it with a single click. Still, I wasn't done. I opened the document that made my skin crawl every time I looked at it. A power of attorney form I'd signed during Dad's health scare 2 years ago, when he couldn't manage the finances and just needed a little help. I'd been managing the taxes, the loans, the investments, quietly, competently, without ever asking for credit. Now I was removing my name from every login, drafting a formal revocation letter, making it official. As I worked, something unexpected bubbled up. Not anger, not sadness. Relief. Like a weight was lifting, piece by piece, every time I hit confirm. But I wasn't rushing it. No angry email. No dramatic confrontation. Just slow, deliberate, quiet withdrawal, like the tide pulling back before the storm hits. I knew they wouldn't notice at first. That was the beauty of it. They were so used to the support being invisible, automatic, effortless. They wouldn't realize what was gone until the cracks started forming. Until the water shut off mid-shower. Until the internet blinked out during the big game. Until the mortgage company left a voicemail they couldn't ignore. The next morning, Megan texted me. THX for dinner, I guess. You could have at least laughed at Dad's joke. A joke. I didn't reply. I just opened the final file, the one they didn't even know existed, and checked the numbers. Then I started writing a message. Not to them, to someone else. And that's when the plan really started. It was a message to my lawyer, Erica, the same one who helped me incorporate my business back when I was nothing more than a freelancer with a refurbished laptop and a dream. Erica's sharp, the kind of woman who doesn't blink when a client says, I think I want to quietly dismantle a financial arrangement with my family. She's also thorough. She reminded me of every joint responsibility, every blind signature I'd given them out of trust, and every legal thread still tying me to people who saw me as a walking wallet. Are you sure you want to do this now? She asked over a late-night Zoom call. You've been cleaning up after them for years. I'm not cleaning up anymore, I said. I'm walking away, but I'm doing it clean. That next week became a checklist of quiet endings. The family phone plan. Split. I set up new lines in their names and gave them a 30-day notice, buried in the fine print of an email they'd probably ignore. The shared insurance policy? Removed myself. The spare credit card my dad had been using just in emergencies. Gone. I even flagged the auto renewals on my mom's makeup subscriptions, the ones she'd always assumed I was happy to cover. Each task came with a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in years. Not revenge, exactly. Not spite. Just the slow, methodical reclaiming of boundaries that should never have been crossed in the first place. Then came the house. Technically, it was still in my name. I'd bought it outright 5 years ago after my first big software contract. Told them it was a gift, even though I kept the deed under my LLC for liability reasons. I'd paid the taxes, the maintenance, the stupid landscaper that my dad refused to fire even after he wrecked the sprinkler system. But now, I wanted it back. I didn't want to kick them out. Not yet. But I wanted them to know it was never truly theirs. That every inch of drywall and carpet and ceiling fan had been mine. That I could sell it, lease it, bulldoze it, and plan a parking lot if I wanted to. That's when Erica mentioned the property audit clause in the LLC agreement. The one that let me call for a full inspection, a reassessment, even a temporary suspension of residency if needed. You really want to go that far? She asked. I want them to stop pretending they built the roof they're sitting under. We scheduled the audit. Quietly. Legally. A letter was mailed. Certified. It would arrive in 3 days. On the surface, nothing seemed to change. I still responded with one-word replies in the family group chat. Still liked the occasional Instagram post of my mom's garden. Still played the role of the quiet, dependable son. But inside, I was counting down. The first crack came on day 4. Mom called me at 7:42 a.m. I didn't answer. Her voicemail was long and rambling. Something about the sprinklers being shut off mid-cycle and a guy in a blazer walking around the backyard taking notes. She was just checking if I knew anything about it. I didn't call back. By the end of the week, Megan had posted a cryptic story on Instagram. Some people forget who was there when they had nothing. Don't worry, we remember. The irony made me laugh. In the dark, at 2 a.m., sipping coffee in the apartment they hadn't seen since I moved out. Then came the second call, this time from Dad. He didn't leave a voicemail, but he texted, "We need to talk." Some guy from the city was asking questions. That wasn't true. The guy wasn't from the city. He was a private inspector. I knew, because I'd hired him. His name was Marcus, and he was damn good at his job. His report came in the next morning, a 68-page document listing every code violation, every unreported renovation, every financial discrepancy linked to the property. Apparently, Dad had rented out the guest house to one of his poker buddies for cash. Hadn't told me. Hadn't reported it. Just pocketed the money and called it a favor. On my property. With my name on the liability line. That's when the gears really started turning. I drafted the next email carefully. Sent it to Erica with a single line, trigger the eviction clause. Quietly. But even then, I wasn't cruel. I gave them 30 days. More than enough time to get their affairs in order, to move, to downsize, to realize that maybe, just maybe, Calling me the dumb one at the dinner table wasn't worth losing the roof over their heads. Still, I didn't tell them directly. Not yet. Instead, I went about my life. Business meetings, gym sessions, dinner with friends. I even visited Megan's old campus, just for fun, walked past the buildings she used to brag about, thought about all the times she called me unqualified for not having walked those same halls. Then, on day 12, I got the email. From Mom. The subject line just said, Nathan. The body was short. No hi. No greeting, just, we got the notice. I don't understand. Why are you doing this? I stared at it for a while. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. And then I wrote the one sentence they'd never expected. Because you've mistaken my kindness for stupidity, and I'm not dumb enough to let that slide anymore. I hit send. The response came within an hour. Not from Mom. From Dad. I don't know what I expected. Maybe an apology, a reluctant admission that he'd crossed a line. Instead, it was a wall of deflection. He started with, "This is overreacting," followed by a guilt trip about family always sticking together, and then pivoted to what he thought was a trump card. "You wouldn't even have money to throw around if we hadn't raised you." I read that part twice. Then once more, just to be sure. Raised me? This man, who forgot my high school graduation because he was on a fishing trip, who once told me to get over it when I called crying after I got fired from my first job. This man thought he was entitled to credit for my success, as if his silence, his dismissiveness, and his constant undermining somehow counted as support. I didn't reply. I forwarded the email to Erica and asked her to keep all future contact through legal channels. From that moment on, I stopped playing the role of the dutiful son. I was now the legal property owner, a client, an adult with boundaries and consequences to enforce them. Things got quiet for a few days after that. Suspiciously quiet. The kind of quiet that makes your skin crawl. I could feel the tension building, like a pressure cooker waiting to blow. I knew my family. They weren't the type to go down gracefully. They'd beg, guilt trip, maybe even threaten, but apologize? Own their behavior? That would mean admitting they were wrong. And nothing terrified them more than losing the illusion that they were always in the right. On day 17, Megan showed up at my office. I don't know how she found the address. I'd never told her where I worked, and it wasn't public. But there she was, in the lobby, talking to the receptionist like she owned the place. I spotted her through the glass wall and froze. She looked different, less smug, more desperate. "Nathan," she said when I opened the door, "can we talk? Just 5 minutes. Please." I didn't invite her in. I just stood in the hallway, arms crossed, expression blank. She sighed and shifted her weight like she was debating whether to fake a tear. "Look, I get it. They were harsh. Dad was out of line. But this is extreme." "You think this is extreme?" I asked, keeping my voice low. "Taking back what's mine?" "There are parents," she said, like that settled something. I laughed, short and sharp. "Funny. You only say our when it's convenient. When I'm footing the bill." She looked at me, and for the first time, I saw it. Not anger, not pity, fear. Real fear. She was realizing I wasn't bluffing. "They don't have anywhere to go," she said. "You can't just throw them out." "They had 5 years to build a safety net," I replied. "I gave them everything, and they spat on it every chance they got. This isn't revenge, Megan. This is me choosing peace." She started to argue, but I was done. I turned and walked back to my office, leaving her standing in the hallway. My assistant asked if I wanted her escorted out. I shook my head. Let her sit with it. Let her explain to Mom and Dad why their golden goose finally stopped laying eggs. By day 20, the cracks were no longer subtle. Dad called from an unknown number and left a voicemail. "I'm not asking for much. Just time. Just don't do anything drastic. You're better than this." Then, a text from Mom. "We're family. This isn't who you are." But it was. Or rather, it was who I had become. Someone who finally understood that being family didn't mean being someone's doormat. That blood wasn't an excuse for betrayal dressed as tradition. On day 24, Erica called. "They filed a complaint," she said. "They're claiming emotional distress. Trying to block the eviction. But it won't hold. You've got everything documented." This was years in the making, Nathan. I nodded slowly, even though she couldn't see me. "Let them squirm," I said. "Let them feel what it's like to be uncertain. To not know when the rug might be pulled." It was cruel, maybe, but not nearly as cruel as the years I spent being invisible unless someone needed a check, a favor, or a last-minute bailout. On day 28, I drove by the house. Just once. Just to see. The lawn was overgrown. Lights off. A for rent sign stuck awkwardly in the yard, something they probably hoped would buy them time. But no one was going to bite. Not with the audit report floating around. I rolled down the window and sat there in silence, the weight of everything finally hitting me. This was the home I'd given them. The place I thought would bring us together. But it was never about the house, or the money, or even the lack of a degree. It was about respect, and they'd run out of it. Then, just as I was about to drive off, my phone buzzed. A new message. From Megan. The message sat there like a weight in my hand. You might want to come home. Something happened. Something bad. I read it again. Home. That word did something to me. Curled my lip, tightened my jaw. That house had stopped being home the moment they made it clear I'd never be more than a walking ATM with a blank resume. Still, I couldn't ignore it. Not because I cared what Megan had to say, but because if something had gone wrong, I needed to make sure it wasn't going to get pinned on me. I drove in silence, headlights cutting through the dusk like a knife. My stomach churned the entire ride. Not from worry, from anticipation. A part of me, the part I'd buried under years of obligation and silence, wanted a fight. Wanted them to try and play the victims one last time so I could finally, fully, and publicly cut the cord. When I pulled up to the house, I knew something was off immediately. There were two cars in the driveway I didn't recognize. One of them looked like a contractor's van. The other was a silver sedan with the emblem half hanging off. The porch light was off, which was odd, because Mom always insisted on leaving it on just in case company comes by. I stepped out of my car, and the warm night air felt heavier than it should have. As I got closer, I saw Megan on the front steps, arms wrapped around her knees, looking small in a way that didn't match her usual posture of smug confidence. She stood when she saw me, brushing hair from her face, and said softly, "You're not gonna believe it." "I'll be the judge of that," I said flatly. "Where's Mom and Dad?" She hesitated. "Inside, talking to the guy from the bank." I blinked. "The bank?" She nodded, eyes wide. Apparently, Dad tried to take out another loan against the property before the eviction notice went through. Claimed it was just a delay in the paperwork. He thought he could flip the guest house for a quick buck and buy time. I felt something cold trickle down my spine. But he doesn't own the house. I do. His name's not on the deed. Exactly. She exhaled hard. The bank caught it before the funds cleared, but now there's a fraud flag on the property. They're sending someone to evaluate next steps. He might have just committed mortgage fraud, Nate. I didn't speak. Couldn't really. My brain was already moving 10 steps ahead. Liability, paperwork, lawsuits, damage control. Where is he now? I asked. Inside, she said again, quieter this time. Yelling. I walked past her and opened the door without knocking. Inside, it looked like a bomb had gone off. Not physically, but emotionally. Papers were scattered on the dining table, drawers left open, cups half full on counters. Dad stood in the middle of it all, red-faced, arms waving as he argued with a man in a navy blazer, holding a folder and a clipboard. You don't get it. Dad barked. This whole thing is just a misunderstanding. My son owns the place. It's all family. There was no fraud. The man didn't flinch. Sir, you filed legal paperwork asserting ownership over a property that, according to county records, belongs solely to Nathan Ellis, listed under a business entity. You submitted forged documentation, which I didn't forge anything. Dad snapped. I made some copies. Adjusted some dates. That's not the same. I cleared my throat, loud enough for both of them to stop. Dad turned, face drained of color. Nathan, he said, voice dropping like a stone. Good. You can explain. Tell him it's fine. We're family. I stared at him, at the man who raised me with backhanded compliments and constant reminders that I'd never be smart enough to succeed. At the man who had just risked jail time using my name to squeeze a few extra months out of the fantasy life he'd been living off my generosity. No, I said calmly. I won't be explaining anything. You're on your own. The man in the blazer gave me a respectful nod. Mr. Ellis, I assume you're aware of the attempted second mortgage application. Just found out, I replied. And I'll be consulting my attorney immediately. If there's any liability being considered here, I'll need a formal report for my records. I can get you a copy, he said, flipping open his folder. It's not pretty. Dad stepped forward, panic leaking through his tough guy veneer. "Come on, Nathan. Don't do this. You know I didn't mean any harm. I just needed time." "Time," I repeated. "Like the years I gave you while you ridiculed me? Like the dinners where you laughed about my lack of a degree while spending the money I earned? That kind of time." Mom appeared in the hallway behind him, arms crossed, face unreadable. She didn't speak, didn't defend, just watched. Megan came in a moment later, hovering awkwardly in the entryway. For once, she had nothing sarcastic to add. No smug grin. No half-joke to break the tension. I walked to the kitchen, took in the granite counters, the glass backsplash Mom had chosen from a magazine I paid for. I opened the fridge. Empty, except for a bottle of wine and a takeout container. Not a single thank you note. Not a single reminder that this was my house. I turned back to them and said, "I'll give you until the end of the week. After that, the locks change. If you're still here, I'll let the sheriff escort you out. Oh, and any legal fallout from your little loan stunt? That's yours to deal with." Dad opened his mouth, but I raised a hand. "We're done here." I walked out before they could say another word, pulled the door shut behind me, and got in my car. I sat there for a minute, watching the front lights flicker on. Maybe Mom had finally moved. Maybe Megan flipped a switch on her way out. Then my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a voicemail. Not from Megan, not from Mom, but from someone I hadn't heard from in years. And when I listened to it, I realized this family drama wasn't done unraveling yet. It was my Uncle Thomas. I hadn't spoken to him in nearly a decade, not since the last family reunion, the one where he cornered me behind the grill with a paper plate in hand and muttered, "You're not like the rest of them. You know that, right?" He was Dad's older brother, the black sheep of the family before I ever earned the title myself. A mechanic who skipped college, got divorced twice, and lived in a trailer by the lake. But somehow, he'd always made more sense to me than anyone else with our last name. His message was calm, gruff, and straight to the point. "Hey, Nate, I heard about what's going on from Megan. Listen, I know they've done you wrong. I warned you years ago, remember? They only love what you give them, not who you are. If you need help handling the mess, or if you just want to sit on a dock with a beer and say nothing, you've got a spot here. They don't get to define you anymore. Let him drown in what they built." I stared at the screen for a long time after the message ended. It wasn't the words, it was the simplicity, the absence of guilt, the quiet understanding. I hadn't realized how badly I needed that until I heard it from someone who wasn't asking for anything. The final week passed like a storm surge. Dad tried everything. Emails, calls, even dropping by my apartment with a cooler of steaks and a sheepish grin, like we could somehow cook the tension away. I didn't answer the door. I didn't reply. I sent every message straight to Erica. Mom's tone changed, too. Her texts shifted from confusion to guilt, then desperation. "You're scaring us. This isn't like you. We're losing everything." But the irony was, it had always been mine. They were only just now realizing that. By Friday afternoon, the movers I hired, my movers, not theirs, arrived at the house. I made sure they were professional, careful, respectful. I didn't want their things damaged. I just wanted them gone. I stood in the driveway as they loaded boxes into the truck. Dad sat on the porch, silent, arms resting on his knees like a man who'd just realized the game was over and he'd been betting with chips he never owned. Mom was inside, trying to argue with the lead mover over what counted as essentials. Megan didn't show. She'd stopped responding altogether after trying to borrow $5,000, just until I figure things out. By 3 p.m., the house was empty. The locks were changed. The title was being transferred to a rental agency I trusted. I'd already interviewed 3 tenants. One was a single mom with a daughter who wanted to plant tomatoes in the backyard. I told her yes on the spot. As the movers drove off, Dad finally stood up and walked toward me. "Nathan," he said, voice cracking for the first time in maybe ever. "Can I just ask you one thing?" I didn't answer. Just looked at him. He hesitated. "Why'd you wait so long to cut us off?" I let the silence hang. Then I said, "Because I thought you might change. I thought maybe, just maybe, if I gave enough, you'd see me as a son. Not a resource. Not the dumb one. Just me." He looked away. "You were wrong," he said quietly. "I know," I replied. "But not anymore." I got in my car and drove off without looking back. No dramatic exits. No parting shots. Just peace. The next few months were the quietest of my life. No calls. No chaos. No frantic requests for help masked as family bonding. The new tenants moved in. I stopped checking the family group chat. Not that anyone had posted in it since the locks changed. The silence was strange at first, but it grew on me. And one Saturday morning, a few weeks later, I drove out to the lake. Uncle Thomas met me at the dock with 2 beers, a smirk, and a nod like no time had passed at all. We sat on that weathered bench, watching the ripples stretch across the water. "You all right?" he asked, cracking his can open. I nodded. "I am now." And for once, for the first time in years, I wasn't lying.